Let's hit the high road. Let's hit the high road. It's the first touch, strong connection. It lays deep in your soul. Feel the kindness strongly coming. 'Cause you can achieve your goal. Let's hit the high road. Let's hit the high road.
Hi, it's Nancy Yeareld, and welcome to High Road to Humanity. And we are so fortunate. Kathleen Ball is here today, and welcome to the High Road, Kathleen.
Very good to be here, Nancy. I'm excited about the show. I haven't done a radio show in a little while because I've been out of the country. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's fun. I always enjoy them. So
Well,
it'll be do it.
Well, I'm so happy you're here. I didn't mean to interrupt you there. She has written a Grail quest, Discovery of a Mysterious Knights Templar Cave in Brazil. And I'm going to just read you a little bit about this before we get into the show today. So Dr. Kathleen Ball is a researcher, a traveler, and explorer of ancient sites. After a life-altering NDE in 1990, Kathleen began a career as a professional artist and art professor, which spanned over 30 years. Now, prior to retirement, she discovered a Templar cave in Brazil while exploring the backcountry, and she set out to create her film, The Brazilian Templar Mystery. And we were just talking about that, and it's out right now on Gaia, and it looks like it may be expanding. She found this carved area by the Templars, the cross above the cave. And then now she's published the backstory, you guys, of this discovery, which became a quest and involved a series of initiations by fire, water, illness, and several dark nights of the soul. Kathleen, the Grail has always interested me. I think it's interested a lot of people. I'm really interested to hear your story. Before we get into it today, I just want to mention quickly that my book arrived yesterday, A Guide to Angel Communication and Spiritual Law. I have to bring it up because I'm so excited that it's here. It's a short read, but it's a powerful read. I will say that. I teach people how to connect to spirit, to God, to your guardian angel, to the earth energies. And then I do channel Archangel Gabriel at the end with messages for humanity. There's a lot of information in this book. I do give the spiritual laws that I feel that we've lost. And I hope that this will enlighten and teach people to connect and go back to spirit. That's my goal, is to get everybody to connect, because as we connect, it does raise the vibration. I want to say quickly also that on Thursdays, I've been doing live psychic readings for people free, because some people can't just do that, and that's okay. But I'm not going to be able to continue with it because I have to promote my own book now, as well as do my own podcast. So I've done a special on my readings. You guys can check it out on my website. I've cut a lot of them in half. I'm doing one 30 minutes and you get the second one half off. You guys can check it out on psychicforhumanity.com. One more thing, I've decided to go ahead. God's probably like, Nancy, you're overdoing it, but I'm doing an empath class. Why? Because there's a lot of empaths out there. I've been meaning to do this for a long time. And people don't understand empaths so much. And as an empath, I really feel it's necessary right now to help the empaths, because we do pick up on the energy of other people. So that's going to be a live one. It's December the 7th. It's a Saturday. I hope you guys will join me. Okay. Having said all that, Kathleen, I'm just so glad you're here. I guess I should start out with your near-death experience, right?
Yeah. That was March 10th. And I came out of it on March 11th of 1990. And my heart stopped. I stopped breathing.
What happened?
It was powerful, very powerful experience. I willed it. I actually willed it to happen. And this is what I tell people: to be very, very careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. And I was already very psychic and had a lot of abilities. I used to do a lot of out of body experiences. I could go visit people. I could tell them what I saw while I was there when they nighttime. A lot of times it happened at night. You know, so I was always really sensitive, and I was also very worried about that. I was very concerned about it. I didn't share it with very many people because, well, of course, you know, we're talking 40, 50 years ago. These weren't normal. And my mother like panicked. She freaked. She froze on. She just completely went, you know, crazy on me and said,
Yeah.
don't you ever talk to anybody about that. Don't you ever mention that to anyone. So
Wow.
you know, it was kind of a taboo, and you know, and I was sort of a revolutionary type person anyway, and I was always one to want to investigate. I didn't take things, you know, just at your word or whatever. And I was searching religions and spiritual belief systems from the time I could talk. So I was looking for information. I came in this time with an agenda, and you know, and so that was unfolding. By the time I had gotten, but I didn't really understand the difficulty that this life was going to present. I really didn't. I don't think I really understood that. At least I didn't remember it enough after you know I came here.
Mhm.
Uh, I didn't really. I guess I didn't remember it enough. Anyway, the bottom line: by the time I was 33 years old, I had lived through just tremendous challenge, constant, continual, tremendous challenge. My husband had been murdered not long before that. I had moved my children up to the Gold Country, up to this area where I live now in the Sierra Nevada foothills. Um, and I just didn't think I could do life. I just didn't think I could do life in this panic. I was an empath, very much an empath.
Right.
And I saw things going in a direction in this country and in this world that I just couldn't bear it. Anyway, bottom line, I wrote down my last will and testament. I
Oh my
manipulated,
God, Kathleen, seriously?
seriously.
Oh,
And I manipulated my best friend into, you know, admitting that she would take care of my children if anything ever happened to me without telling her, you know, what I was thinking and what I was planning. So I knew they were taken care of, and she had a much more stable life than I did. So I thought they would be much better off. I had the whole thing figured out.
oh my,
Anyway, so when I laid down that night, I actually stopped breathing and my heart stopped. And I went into this space that was just beautiful. It was loving and beautiful, and I felt the presence, the angelic presence. I was there, I don't know how long, but I was in that state for a quite a long time. And during that experience, I was given the choice. I was given the opportunity. You can either stay here because it's freedom. You have freedom of choice. You either stay here if you choose, or you can go back and fulfill your commitment, fulfill your destiny and what you had gone to Earth to begin with to complete.
wow.
And yeah, and it was pretty powerful. And um, I was shown different possible
Like
futures.
scenarios, like different scenarios of like if you
Yeah,
went
yeah.
back
I
and if you
saw
stayed.
a few different scenarios, and one in particular that I really resonated with, which was it was energy, a lot of, you know, energy. It was very different. We were less physical beings than we are now. Everything was less physical, was much more ethereal. And just the harmony and the beauty and the I could just feel a sense of freedom that we could expand on our evolutionary paths individually and collectively. And
Mm.
we were connected telepathically. And it was just beautiful. It was really, you know, it's what sustained me all these years. I mean, I have vividly, you know, remember that
Remember.
just like it was
Yeah,
yesterday. I've
yeah.
painted it a couple of times. I've done, you know, I've tried to paint it as best I can, capture, you know,
That's
a
cool.
multi-dimensional experience on two-dimensional painting surfaces on nearly impossible, but I did the best I could. And anyway, so when I came out of that experience, you know, and I admit I chose that I was going to come back. I was going to continue to participate in that event, that multi-dimensional shift that I saw very clearly was with
Can I
took
stop
place.
you? Can I stop you a second? I just want to ask, so I just want to clarify what you're saying. So when you were out of your body and you had your near-death experience, you saw humanity ascending to a higher vibration. You saw us becoming light beings.
Yes, yes,
That's
I did.
amazing. I've never had anybody say this before. That's really cool.
I've talked to a couple other people that have had similar experiences, not in the magnitude that I had, but similar,
Wow.
very similar.
Okay.
So yeah, but I know that it's inevitable. It just may take us a while to get there. Now, when I came back into my physical body, and for the first time in my life, I was scared. I was really frightened. I was not frightened of anything before that, but I was really scared because I could feel that I was still and I couldn't catch a breath, and I was trapped in this body that was dead, basically. And I was really frightened. It really scared me.
Yeah.
And I just prayed. I wanted to be alive more than anything, for the first time in my life. I really was on the fence about even being on this planet prior to that experience. Anyway, when I came back fully into my body and caught that first breath, I just had this hope and a tremendous amount of hope for humanity. I felt an energized, renewed sense of purpose. And I just, I committed 100% to participating in any way that I could towards bringing this about for humanity, with humanity. I wanted to work with other people. It was years and years and years, though, before I ever came into contact with anyone else who was actively working towards bringing this about. And I remember being thrilled about that, but it was literally like 2004 or something, before 2005, when I went to the Science and Consciousness Conference in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It was the first time
Oh my
that I was,
God.
yeah,
I
I
lived
was
in
around
Albuquerque for many years. That's
people.
so funny. Okay.
Yeah, but I was finally around like-minded people, and I started meeting people that understood this and that had glimpses of it, and I started going, wow, finally,
Yeah, my crowd, my tribe, right?
yeah, right. I was finally meeting my tribe. It was really awesome.
Yeah.
And and yeah, it was just, things started unfolding after that. I started reading the Bible. I read through the whole Bible like 400 times. I read everything I could get my hands on. I mean, I had a library. When my house burned to the ground in 2015, I had a library of over 5,000 books that I had read and that I had taken in. And I mean, nuclear physics, quantum physics, biology, everything
And you have
that
a
I,
lot of different degrees too, don't you? You hold different, how many degrees do you have?
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I do. I have a bachelor's. I have two bachelors, actually. I have a bachelor's in metaphysical sciences, and I have a bachelor's in fine art and multicultural studies. That was a double bachelor's as well. And I have a master's in fine art, and I also have a master's in ministry. I'm actually a minister. I studied world religion, and then I have a PhD in metaphysical science. So all that reading material and research that I did prior to that went into, resulted culminating in getting my PhD. So
So can I just ask, at what point did you decide, okay, I've gathered all this information, I'm going to search for the Grail. I'm going to find out about the Knights Templar. I'm going to find out what they were doing. At what point did you say, okay, this is what I'm going to do?
Well, I didn't really know. All I knew is that I needed to communicate this message to the best of my ability, and try to have some sort of influence on humanity. And I thought that I was going to do it as an artist. And, that was the topic of my work as an artist and art professor. And then when I did lectures, I would talk about what you and I are talking about right now. I would
Mhm.
talk about these things. I would talk about, how we can have an impact on the rest of the world via our art. And I was researching, the fallen angels and the Anunnaki back in the 90s. I mean, before people
Wow.
were aware of it. And I
Right.
was doing installations all over all over San Francisco and all over Northern California, Canada, and in Europe.
Mhm.
Transfiguration, where, you actually walked into a huge space and understood the whole transfiguration process. I was doing artwork. I was very prolific artist, and I was doing artwork that was influencing people everywhere I went. And I was doing shows, sometimes 3 shows a month. I was really very involved in that, and I got to the point where, well, actually, I probably would have stuck with. I probably would have stayed with that because I had this perfect situation. I was teaching, and I had my art business, so I had, plenty of income. And then on my breaks during the summer, I could take off and go to the ancient sites that I wanted to go. I went to Egypt. I went, all over the world. I've traveled. I took students all through Europe. I did all sorts of stuff with classes, people, students, and also by myself on during my breaks. So I
Yeah.
felt that I had this wonderful life. Everything was perfect, hunky dory. And I went to Brazil, but I had a liver disease. Okay.
Okay. Right. I
I,
read that. I read that.
I
Yeah.
had a very serious liver disease, and I'd been battling. So in 2011, I was diagnosed with liver cancer, and they told me I was going to have a transplant, which I fought tooth and nail because I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to take the immunosuppression afterwards. I was really worried about that for good reason. Anyway, so from 2011 to 2015, I had 29 cancer tumors in my liver, and I went through the chemo. I did chemo treatments. I went to Peru and I underwent ayahuasca, 3-day ayahuasca ceremony. I was
Right.
able to get rid of 7 tumors on that trip.
Wow.
But then the following year, and by that time I'd had 27 or something. But then in 2015, the following year, I got another tumor and I got scared. They said it was, this was aggressive. So my girlfriend called and said, "Hey, come to Brazil. I'm working with John of God. Come to Brazil and maybe he can do something for you." Blah 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 blah.
Can I
And I
stop
wrote,
you a second? I read something in your book. I read it online and I just want to talk about this briefly. And I want you to talk, we've got so much to talk about today, but I want people to know this. You changed your diet. I caught this and I thought this was really interesting
yeah,
because I've been doing this too and I've gone back and forth. You changed your diet. Everything was cool. You became a vegetarian. You did have a little fish. And I'm not a doctor and I'm not giving medical advice. So let me preface what I'm going to say. But you put red meat back into your diet, and it seemed like that is when you had the issue. And I have realized this too. And
yeah.
it's because of our how they handle the animals. I just want to bring this up because I think it's really important
Yeah.
that you
And
mention
I think
people.
I think more importantly than that, because I do eat meat now, but
Okay.
I don't eat a lot of it, but I do. But I think more importantly, it was the GMOs and the antibiotics and the things
Right.
in the meat,
Right.
and that because I didn't really know enough about that at
Okay.
the time.
Okay.
So
I just
when
wanted to say that because, yeah, it's really important that people pay attention to what they're putting in
I
their body, and that really makes
very,
a
very,
difference.
very important.
Okay.
So, and I really think that was more important because my liver, you have to remember, looked like Swiss cheese at this point. I was really functioning on a very, very minimal part of my liver. And
Okay.
so I had to eat very pure. I had to really be careful what I was eating
Okay.
um, because my liver just didn't function well. I was doing Chinese medicine also. I did that for many, many years to continue to tonify and purify my liver and detoxify my liver.
Okay.
I did everything I could to keep from having that liver transplant. So
Okay. So you go,
2015,
yeah, so you go to Brazil. You go to Brazil and your liver is like this at this point, right?
yeah, yeah. But I hiked to Machu Picchu in 2014. I was still, I was still very active. Nothing really stopped me. I just would go purify my liver and then I'd be able to do whatever I wanted.
Oh my
So
God.
in 2015, when she came up with this plan to go see, meet with John of God, I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot. I've done ayahuasca. I know, there's alternatives work. So
Okay.
I flew to meet her. Long story short, we ended up in Brasilia. This is funny about it, synchronicities. She didn't know how to drive a standard clutch, a car with a standard
Oh,
shift.
right.
Right. I had forgotten my driver's license. So she rented the car and they gave us a car with the standard shift.
Okay.
We contacted the people up in Abadiania, and John of God, for whatever reason, was not there for several days. So she said, well, let's go up into this area, into the Chapada, and go see these waterfalls, this waterfall site.
Mhm.
There's these magnificent waterfalls. I said, sure, let's do it. Well, it's a 3.5 hour drive outside of Brasilia to go into Alto Paraíso and Moinho area where these waterfalls are.
Wow.
And she didn't know how to drive a car with the clutch. We had reservations for Cavalcanche. Well, we never made it to Cavalcanche because she blew up 2 clutches on the way there. And the rental car company had to keep coming and replacing those cars, which put us and ended up taking us 6 or 7 hours to get to Alto Paraíso instead of 3.
Oh my God.
Last time they finally gave us a car with it was automatic. Finally, they figured it out. They brought us an automatic. So
Mhm.
at this point, it's dark. She doesn't drive in the dark either. And we are not going to obviously make it to to where we, to Cavalcanche. That wasn't going to happen.
Mhm.
So she says, well, let's look up and see what we can find that's around this area. Moinho, San George, Alto Paraíso. I said, Alto Paraíso, that sounds like a good place. High something. I knew alto, it meant high. Well, high paradise. I said, okay, let's go there. So I called and I got reservations. My phone was working, and it hadn't been. My phone was working. I got through to a Pousada, which is the hotel. I got a reservation. Boom, we went straight there, and we're talking pretty late at night. So it was interesting that we got that reservation that late.
Right.
Anyway, we got in. We got settled. Everything. Next morning, I went in, and I happened to connect with probably one of the very few English speaking people in town that following morning, and got directions to the waterfalls. And I had a whole nother spiritual experience that happened, which I'm not going to get into today. But anyway, bottom line, I was able to go back to the Pousada and tell Adele, my friend, where the waterfalls were, et cetera, et cetera. So on the day 2, we, ventured out to find these waterfalls.
Okay.
So we set off to Agua Caliente, which means, cold water.
Yeah.
We headed down to the waterfall. It was magnificent. We hiked, it was about a 4 kilometer round trip, and it was absolutely magnificent, beautiful, hot. It was really hot. So we come back up. It's about lunchtime. The owner of the camping Pousada, which was there on that land, invites us to lunch.
Oh,
So we
yeah.
said, sure, yeah, that sounds great.
Tattoo,
So
right?
his name was Fernando, and they call him Tattoo now as a nickname. He's very well known now. But
Okay.
anyway, he invites us to lunch, and he says, hey, you girls want to see this property next door? They have all these crystals, and there's this crystal vein that goes through the property, and it's really, it's really something to see. And we said, crystals? Yeah, of course, we wanted to go and pick up. And he said, you can pick up these crystals and you can take them. You can take as many as you want. So he hooks us up. We get hooked up with Leomar. That's our guide. And we go to this crystal vein. We're loaded down with crystals, and we're just having this great time, but it's really hot. And we've already hiked about 5 kilometers. So he says at this point, we get to this crystal vein, and it's magnificent. It goes through the property, and it's about 1 meter in width by 1 meter in height. And it's really something to see.
Wow.
So anyway, at that point, he says, well, there's a little cave just a little further down if you want to go and rest. And then we can head back up the mountain, because we're talking straight up. We were straight down in the middle of nowhere. And this is wilderness, total wilderness out here. So we get to the mouth of the cave, and Leomar lifts up the branches And I mean, I literally almost fell over. I just looked at him and I went, holy moly, what is a Knights Templar cross doing out here in the middle of Alta Paraiso? I mean, I couldn't even believe it.
Yeah.
And Adele, she was with me and she's like, oh my God, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because I had been doing some research on the Knights Templar. I had been actually started with Leonardo da Vinci, which eventually led me to the esoteric, belief systems that were current at that time that he was studying. Anyway, and it eventually led me to the Templars. And then, of course, this wasn't 2009. Dan Brown's film came out, the Da Vinci Code.
Oh yeah, right.
Everybody knew about
Right.
about these things at this point. So, long story short, we come up. I interview Leomar. We come up, and I have to leave. We go to Badianya. I meet with John of God. That was a whole nother spiritual experience. Long story short, after our meeting, which he was very shocked to see me, 3 days later he had a heart attack, and then not long after that he was arrested.
Oh my
So
God.
I didn't do anything. I just was a witness. But anyway, he was arrested for some pretty bad stuff. I recognized him. That's what I did. I
Okay.
recognized him and I looked into his soul, and I knew who he was. And he had been very, very, very involved, let's say, in the Inquisition. So at one point.
Oh wow. Can I just ask you, when you got to the cave and you saw the cross above it, did you go in? Did you explore at all?
Yes, I did. I went in, but when Adele finally handed me a flashlight and I realized that I was surrounded, I had spiders crawling all over me,
Oh
and
my.
there were all over the place. And so I got out of there pretty quick, and I'm brushing off these spiders, but I was in there long enough to see that there was graffiti inside the cave.
Okay.
I know this. I know the cave's a Templar cave. I have this information, but we have to leave to go to Abadiania because she's got the car, right?
Mhm.
So, but what I did do though is I did go when we went past, we had to go back through Brasilia to get to Abadiania, which was in the south in another area. So I did get a car and come back up to Alta Paraiso on my own after we met with John of God. And finished another part of my own spiritual quest that took place there. I connected with two, these synchronicities that happen in my life happen all the time, but I connected with both of the two town shamans that exist in Alta Paraiso, both of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
And
great.
one of them actually sent me on a quest. He met me in front of a health food store and stopped me and asked me if I would sit. And that was the second one. And he actually sent me out on a spiritual quest, which is what I finished when I rented that car and came back. But anyway, so I get back. Finally, I've got to leave. I'm on a short leash. I've got to go to the airport, and I've got to fly home. And at this point, I'm still teaching. Actually, I had taken leave from the college because I was the last report the doctors had said I was in the advanced stages of liver failure. So I had actually taken I'd taken a disability leave from the college at that point. So I get back to US. Yeah, 9 days later, my house burns to the ground, and I lost everything, all my curriculum, all my artwork, all my
They
family.
wanted you, somebody didn't want you to do it anymore. Isn't that crazy? Is that how you look at it?
My house burnt to the ground, everything gone in the flash. 3,800 degrees, it melted. It literally vaporized my bronze artwork. The bronzes that I had in my house were vaporized.
Well,
So
what did you think? What did you think at this point? I mean, honestly, what was your
honestly, the night of the fire, it was September 11th, 2015. My husband and I went over to our cabin, and I had a dream that I was in the middle of that fire and that I was watching everything being returned to its subatomic state. And then it's like these two hands handed me all these all these elements and said, you can build whatever life you want now.
Mm.
And I didn't have any idea what that meant at the time, but it started unfolding. So 7 weeks after my house burned to the ground, and I'm still, living in this cabin. I just moved in. We finally got relocated into a house. I haven't even unpacked. Well, there's nothing to unpack, but their insurance company had given us a bunch of household stuff, and I hadn't even had that unpacked yet. And the doctor calls and said, your last CT scan, you've got another tumor, which made 29. And he said, this one's very aggressive, and you have to have a transplant immediately. So next thing I know, I'm in the hospital. November, 3rd. I'm in the hospital preparing to go into pre-op for a liver transplant, which
Wow.
I had fought, all this time. But I decided, well, okay, because he told me, he said, if you don't do this now, you're not going to make it. This will take you out. You're going to die. So I said, okay, all right, let's just do it. Let's just go ahead and do it. So I did. And the anti-rejection meds, within 6 months, I started losing my hearing. And by the time 8 months later, I had so much nerve damage that was done from the immunosuppression, because I found out later they were over medicating me on top of it, that I had lost 95% of my hearing. I was almost deaf, and I had to have a cochlear implant.
Crazy.
Yeah. So, and that's what I have, is a cochlear implant. But anyway, so that meant choosing something other than the college, because I couldn't teach anymore. Right? I had to do something different. I had discovered this cave, though, and I decided to do a documentary about it, because this is a history changing. This was really a big, huge discovery. Most people don't really understand the impact. Not only did it say that the Templars were in South America, but it said that the Templars were in South America before the 1300s.
Okay.
This is absolutely huge. The markings in the cave, are the same markings that are in Chinon, that are in Dome, France, and that are in a small church in Altuguia in Portugal. And all of those markings are from the 11th to the 13th century, 14th century,
Now,
early 14th.
what are the markings? Are they leaving information? What are they leaving? What are the
Well,
markings, I guess?
the graffiti, I've come to find out, were initiation symbols from Timothy Hogan. Actually, we've talked about this, and Scott Walter and I and Timothy Hogan have discussed what these symbols in there are.
Mhm.
And apparently they are initiation symbols. One is a very, very still mysterious symbol that looks, and from everything I can find, it's a Lemurian cross, a Lemurian star cross, which means, indicates to me that they were schooled in esoteric belief systems that went much further back, even further back than Atlantis and Egypt and Samaria and everything that we knew to date.
Right.
So I really believe that they did have texts, they did have documents, they did have things that dated, much, much further back. And when
So
I
that,
found out from Timothy Hogan that they did actively, before they became an organization, from 1040 all the way to 1118, when they were in the Holy Land, they were actually actively going out to Constantinople and Greece and different places in the world, and they were collecting documents and spiritual esoteric belief system knowledge. And they
Mhm.
were actually being initiated by certain orders. So what I found in the cave didn't seem so, out of place, actually, when I discovered that information.
Right. Now, the cross behind you, does that come from Atlantis, Lemuria? Where does that come from? Where do you think it originated? Because
Well, the Lemurian cross would have originated in Lemuria and would probably been passed to Atlantis, because, when we look at our evolutionary history, things we don't just have Lemuria and stop, and then Atlantis stop, and then It doesn't work that way. What
Mhm.
happens is things flow into the next evolutionary stage. And so we still have remnants of Lemuria that are mixed in with Atlantis. And there's a lot of people today that still have abilities that were left over from Lemuria. We still have people amongst our species that have some of those abilities.
Mhm.
I have very clear memories of Lemuria, very, very
I
clear.
know I heard you say I saw an interview with you where you say that you do remember being there. Do you
Yeah.
feel that you're I just picked this up intuitively. I mean, you were brought back. I feel like your mission is to uncover a lot of this stuff. That's why you came here. This is your mission to uncover this information, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured that. There's something I really want to ask you. And I know we only have an hour. I could talk to you for hours, but I want to talk a little bit about the Grail. And
Okay. So when I realized that I was actually on a Grail quest,
yeah,
was actually sometime in the early 2000s.
okay.
I had reunited with my high school sweetheart, who was my true love, and we're married. We're married now.
Oh, God bless.
Um, in 2008, we got back together. In 2009, we got married, and we went to France for a month for our honeymoon.
Right.
And while we were on that trip, we canceled all our plans because, again, the synchronicity, the woman that we hired to arrange our trip didn't have a clue at the distances between places, and so she had us on a great race. So I fired her. And my husband said, well, so now what are we going to do? I said, we're going to wing it.
Yeah.
We're going to do what I do. We're going to wing it. You're going to get to see what I do here. Anyway, so I had to go into I had to go to Dome, France, because this, was prior to a lot of people having Wi-Fi and all this kind of stuff. So in order to get a hold of this woman to cancel these plans, we had to drive to Dome, France, which was a couple towns away from where we were in Sina.
Right.
We're in the Loire at this point, in the Dordogne. So anyway, so we go up to Dome, and I go to the internet cafe, I handle all that, I cancel all our plans, and then we're looking around at what to do. So there's an art exhibit that's closing, it's just starting to close, and we did go in and connect with an artist there. And then we went down into a grotto, and we saw some. I wasn't terribly impressed. As we're coming up from the grotto, though, one of the representatives from the museum comes up to me, and I mean, I just looked right straight into my eyes, and he says, what do you know about the Knights Templar?
Oh my
And
God.
I start rattling off a bunch of stuff, and he says, well, he said, how would you like to go see the dungeon where they were held before they died? And I'm like, I'm looking at my husband, and I was like, yeah, absolutely, I would love to do that. So he hands me the keys. He walks us over to the dungeon, and he said, bring the keys back when you're done. I said,
Wow.
okay. So off we go and into this dungeon. As soon as I entered this space, it wasn't actually a dungeon. This was interesting. It was actually a tower where they were held, which had been a guard, where the guards had lived. This had been a place where the guards had initially used to stay.
Mhm.
But that's what they had to, when they first arrested all these knights in 1307, they really didn't have the
Place to
facilities.
put them. Yeah. Yeah.
They really didn't have the facilities. I mean, it wasn't really well thought out, I guess, as far as facilities. So
Mhm.
anyway, so we walk into this space, and I'm immediately overwhelmed with I'm an empath. So I'm picking up on despair. I'm picking up on anger. I'm picking up on all of this emotion. And I'm just
Wow.
photographing all of this graffiti that's in there. I mean, I was in there for probably an hour, and I photographed everything I could, everything I saw.
Wow.
I actually went back when I was in Portugal in March. I actually went back. I mean, when I was in London, I took a real quick trip to back into Dome, and I photographed. I found more. I actually saw more
Then
than
you
what I
went
had
back.
seen initially. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so here we are, the initial trip. I photograph everything. I take these keys back to the man, and he says to me, you know what the Templars were protecting? And I said, well, I have some ideas on that. What do you believe that they were protecting? And he said, the bloodline of Mary and Jesus. And I said, okay. So with that information, and he tells me just sort of offhandedly, he says, there's some other places you can go. If you want to go into Marseille, you might be able to find some information, further information if you'd like or whatever. So I want to go. I want to go to Marseille. And at this point, I feel that presence that I feel. I'm heading somewhere of the energy, Holy Spirit, people call it all sorts of things, but it's the creative. Yeah, I can feel it. It's working. And when he said Marseille, oh, yeah, that resonated with me. I need to go to Marseille. Okay. So we go to Marseille. My husband and I get there. And I'm immediately drawn to this cathedral that I see. And so I walk up and I go to open the door and it won't open. So we went and had a coffee and we came back. And then this time when I went to open the door, a nun opens the door and she takes one look at me and she starts crying and she's holding me. And she says, oh, madame, I'm so happy to see you. I've been waiting for you for years.
Oh my God.
When you came, please come in. And she's hugging me like I was her child or something. So she takes me back into her office with my husband, and my husband's just wondering what the heck's going on.
Yeah, right.
Takes me back. She draws me a map and she says, you must promise me, you must promise that you will go and you will complete whatever you are assigned to do. And I said, okay, I promise I will go. So anyway, it was just this, I knew it was part of this Grail quest. I knew that was part of it. So we go to St. Baume, we go to St. Maximum, we go to we go to look for St. Baume, I should say, but we go to St. Maximum and there's these relics and there's all this stuff, but I didn't feel that that's where I needed to be. I felt like I needed to go on further to St. Baume, but we couldn't find it.
Okay.
So we were scheduled to meet with some friends for the 4th of July on the coast. So we went ahead and went down there. And the night that we were planning on leaving anyway, but that night I had this again. I was woke up in the middle of the night and I get my sketchbook out and I start doing this sketch of this little hut, and it's on top of a mountain. And I wake my husband up finally and I said, we have to go back to find St. Baume. And he's like, well, I don't want to go that way. And I'm like, well, I have to. I promised that I would do this and I would complete it, and I'm going to do it. I need to do it. So we go back to St. Baume. This time the path is like opened up and we go right straight to St. Baume. We went right straight there. Okay. We stayed at the convent. The next morning we get up and we're walking up the mountain. And it was like I was in another dimensional reality. I felt like I was in another dimension. It was beautiful. I felt the light. I felt the presence of Mary Magdalene. Wow. I felt her energy very, very powerfully drawing me up the hill, up this little mountain path. Mm-hmm. Butterflies were landing on me. Birds were coming and, singing like to me and in my face. And it was just this magic was happening all the way. They were like escorting me up this path. We get to the top, and there's this little grotto that's up there, and it's been turned into a Catholic chapel, and there's pews in there, and I'm feeling agitated, and I'm like, okay. So I immediately sit down and I go into meditation.
Okay.
Immediately. I just sit down, my husband sits next to me, and I just go into meditation, and I feel like I'm being pushed. I feel like I'm being pushed on, like something's pushing on me. And the next thing I know is I'm starting to feel this expansion of light within me. And I mean, I'm just sort of expanding, and this light's expanding. And the next thing I know, I see in my mind's eye a swirling in this place, like all of these
Energy? Is it
in there
energy?
swirling and swirling, and they're coming up in my face, and they're trying to frighten me, and I'm not frightened, and I'm seeing this swirling energy, and it's going out the top. And this took probably about 45 minutes for all that to happen. And once that was finished, I just felt like I could relax. And there was all this light coming in, this beautiful light and angelic presence. And it was just phenomenal. And
You cleared it.
cleared it. Well, I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time.
Yeah, I'm like, what?
I did. Anyway, I've got this I'm beaming. I've just got this big smile, and I open my eyes, and there's a priest. There's actually 4 priests and a bishop in there getting ready to conduct the Eucharist. Okay, so this one priest looks at me and he smiles at me, and I'm going, and I knew that he knew. Anyway, so he invites us up. He says, "Are you a Christian?" And I had been baptized as a Christian at one point. So I said, "Sure, yes, I am." He said, so he gives me this cracker and this wine stuff, but it's not wine, it's juice, some kind of juice. And I drink the juice, and then we're instructed to wait. And then the bishop will bless us, and then we can eat the crackers. So we're heading up to, we're the last people. Everybody else has gone ahead of us, and we're the last 2. And I get up and I'm looking at the bishop, and I've got this smile still because I've just come out of this experience.
Yeah.
He grabs the cracker out of my mouth and starts swearing at me in French. Yeah.
Wow.
And so what comes out of my mouth? "Please forgive him, Father, for he knows not what he says." That's what comes out. He gets even more angry and lunges for me. So at that point, the 2 priests on both sides of him pick him up by the arms and physically take him out of the grotto.
He was a bad egg.
So I'm in there, and Dale and I are in there, and we're walking around, and it's just beautiful. And I'm just feeling this beautiful energy in there. And the priest comes back. About 15 minutes later, the priest comes back, and he comes, "Oh, Madame, I'm so sorry. I apologize for our bishop. I don't know what happened. I don't know what come over him, but we want to thank you for what you have done." He says, "Please stay as long as you like. And, just stay as long as you like. You are welcome." And I said, okay. So we just stayed, I collected some of the water from the grotto because I suspected that it had been transformed,
Purified. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was that. That really kind of set off my Grail quest.
No kidding. I mean,
it really did.
wow.
And so from then on, that's when things started happening pretty fast. A lot of things started happening pretty quickly. And it wasn't long after that, of course, that I discovered the cave. And then now things are, they're jump starting. That constantly happening. I mean, everywhere I go, I'm finding things. I just recently uncovered an altar in Portugal at a small church that was built by the Templars in the 10. It was began in 1050, completed in 1090. And it not only does it have the Templar graffiti that matches the graffiti in my cave inside, but it also has an altar that has Jesus, Mary, the 2 children, and it's surrounded by the fleur de lis.
That's where they fled. That's where, in France maybe is where Jesus fled. I've heard this before, and Mary, and that he does have descendants. We've only got a certain amount of time, but I do have a couple questions. We could do another show actually, but but the thing is, and I just want to understand this, and I want to make sure the audience understands. So let me just kind of talk about this for a minute. So the Grail, from what I'm understanding, the Knights Templar were formed, and they were going all to different destinations throughout the world to get the information, the wisdom that was left by Lemuria and by Atlantis.
Atlantis.
Is that correct to say that?
Yes, via, yeah, right.
Okay, so
Yeah,
they
via
were doing this.
Phoenicians, right. It was passed, all this information was passed down, Sumer, Phoenicians, Egyptians, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, to
Well,
come forward. And there has always been a group or more, many groups that have kept this information sacred to pass it forward, because many people believe that this is the time we're living in right now
right.
that will be transfiguration that will take place. So
Right. So a couple more questions, if you don't mind.
sure.
So from what I saw, I watched a little bit on a couple documentaries, and there today there is a Knights Templar today. These guys are still doing this. They have a lot of these artifacts. And where are they held? And it almost feels like they have some, and then there's some here, there's some here. It seems like it's still scattered and it hasn't been brought together. Is that right?
Yeah, they're still scattered for a reason, and it's for protection of these items, because we're still not to the place
Not
in
right.
our history that we can bring these out. We can talk about these things and we can let people know that they exist, but they can't be actually exposed, because they're still in danger. You know that we're in a spiritual warfare right now,
Yes,
on this
absolutely.
planet.
Right.
Yeah, so
Okay. Okay.
some of those towers are still, intact enough to where they could cause some damage if they were able to get their hands on these things. So,
Okay. Now, from what I didn't realize, there's more than one Grail.
yes.
How many are there? Do you know?
From what I understand, there's 10.
Okay, I've heard that. Okay. Now, here's my biggest question. This really blew my mind and made a whole lot of sense when I was checking this stuff out. God, I'm gonna have you back. I gotta read your book. But it's the manna that really blew my mind. And I'll say what I know, and if you would explain it, and then I guess we got to get out of here for today because we've been on for so long. But when you read in the Bible about manna, you're like, oh, that's what they used so they could feed all the people. But when I started to realize it's a combination of elements that has, I don't know how I want to put it, as an energetic charge so much that it it charges all of these um grails, and that is why two people could carry it on either side with tons of gold, because it floats, because this manna is what causes it to float. Is that right?
Well, I don't know about that personally, but I do know that manna was placed in the Arks of the Covenant to increase the energetic, the electromagnetic abilities, and cause it to be so powerful. And this is why, when certain people touched the Arks, they turned, they just dissolved. They basically just turned to dust. They were killed instantly,
Okay.
because these, it was a very, very, and this has to do with the sacred geometrically formation, the actual structure of it, the fact that it's made with acacia wood, which is also, a powerful, very powerful element
Conductor.
within the acacia wood itself. And then you fill it with this mana, and then you've really got, you've got a, what is it? Timothy Hogan refers to it as a, oh, I want to say conductor, but it's not. It's not conductor.
Like an
There's
energy, like a booster. It's like
yeah, a capacitor. Yeah, so
okay.
it's a very powerful unit at this point. And then if you top that off and put it inside one of the Great Pyramids or one of these other pyramidal structures, you can imagine the amplification. I mean, just imagine the amplification.
No.
I've been in the Great Pyramid, and I have had some powerful experiences every time I've been in the King's Chamber. So I could just imagine if we had access to an ark with the manna, and my natural abilities, are probably more so than most people, because I exercise them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Could you imagine what the potential?
Well, my last question, I guess, that I'll ask you. I really feel like we had free electricity a long time ago. And when the big flood came, or whenever the time was, it's when it stopped. I don't know. Who knows for sure? But I believe, and I just want to know, do you believe that these arcs were helping to generate the electricity for the planet? Or
Oh
do you,
yeah, they were definitely here to, yeah, to generate energy throughout the planet through the grids. We're finding out now that all of these pyramids throughout the whole world are all connected, and they're all connected with the Orion's belt. We're finding out so much more now. I mean, it is a wonderful time to be alive right now because so much is being revealed. And I mean, there's no accident. I know I intentionally reincarnated this particular time so that I could be present for all that's going on right now. This is a very, very powerful time to be alive. And we can look outside and we can see all this stuff going on politically, et cetera, blah blah blah,
Mhm.
that makes it look maybe that's not the case. But you always have to have a dying of the old before you have the birthing of the new. So I
Right.
saw someone on social media post something about, well, we're both a death doula and a birth doula at the same time. A doula is someone who is assists with birth or death, either
Right.
way. So we're
Right.
having to be both simultaneously within our own beings. And I think what that's about is we can't judge at this point in time.
Right.
As difficult as that might be and may feel, we have to stay balanced within ourselves because everything happens for a reason and it all is unfolding exactly the way it's supposed to. I always refer people to the time of King Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn's position in history. She was pivotal in the creation of the United States, the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion. What happened because of her? Henry VIII, did not have good intentions, but he threw off the shackles of the Catholic Church for her. But
Mhm.
what that did was throw off the shackles of the Catholic Church for
Yeah.
everyone in England, which set the stage for it coming to the United States of America. I don't think you really have to look at how history unfolds. Now, having been Anne Boleyn at that place and at that point in history, she probably wasn't real happy about it. But in the big picture, if
Yeah.
if it hadn't been for Anne Boleyn, who knows how history would have unfolded? You see what I mean? And,
How
and
interesting.
Henry VIII was this abominable person who was cutting off his wife's head and doing all
Yeah.
this horrible stuff.
Yeah.
But if it hadn't been for him, look at
He
you see the
catapulted it. Yeah, he catapulted it. Isn't that
right.
crazy?
So you have to take that little scenario and apply it to other aspects of what we're living today. Certain things have to happen a certain way in order for our evolutionary process to continue and unfold. And it's all for the betterment of mankind. And you also all have to remember that we are indestructible.
Right.
We are infinite souls. We are infinite. So even though we physically leave this planet, we're never destroyed.
Right.
We are always infinite and we're
Our
always existing.
consciousness, yeah,
Yeah.
lives on. Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Kathleen Ball, thank you so much. Wow.
Yeah.
Bless
Yeah.
you for all the work you do. I have to say, God bless you. I'll send you some good energy there. And you guys got to pick up her book. It's a Grail Quest. It came out in 2023. It's a discovery of mysterious Knights Templar and the cave in Brazil. And how do
Right.
people find you? What's your website? How do people connect with you?
You can follow me on Facebook, Kathleen Ann Ball, and with an E, or the Templars in Brazil is another Facebook site. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. Right now, I'm doing a Grail Quest step by step. How do you enter a Grail Quest? I'm on level 4 of that right now, and
Cool.
I'm talking about that on TikTok. So that
Oh,
is a
wow.
Grail Quest TikTok page. You can also go to my website, www.templarsinbrazil.com. And I have a new documentary that's coming out. So it'll be coming out before the end of the year. Hopefully, we're in the last editing stages right now. So
Let me know so I can post it for the audience. I'd love to have you come back and talk about it.
Oh yeah, I'll come back. That sounds good. Just get a hold of, just get a hold of Michelle.
I will.
Yeah.
Well, before we get out of here, you guys, I mean, definitely pick up my book because it's teaching us how to connect. We're on the same page. And so I hope you guys have a fabulous weekend. I'm going to get out of here for today. Kathleen, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Nancy. I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
All right, you guys, I'm out of here for today. Everyone take care and God bless.
Hold your head high, the world is coming. Watch the colors lift your soul. Connect the dots and keep the motion. Can achieve your goal. Let's hit the high road.